So I'm going to let you kick it off, and if you want to do any sort of tweeting, Instagramming, Snapchatting, is there any others out there? Maybe Facebook. But we do have a hashtag. Usually we display it here, but we don't have the virtual display set up this evening. So it's PHL Sales. PHL Sales. Philly Sales.
Or airport sales for sure.
It's Philly sales, not PHL.
Well, Philly Sales just it's too many characters. Come on, we only have 140 to work with. So, but we definitely encourage taking pictures, tagging it, and just whatever insights you get out of this tonight's talk, please share it out there into the wild. PHL Sales. And without further ado, Donna, let's lead it off.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I am so pleased to see all these faces here today. We have this is probably our biggest turnout so far that we've had. This is our 8th event, and I'm going to attribute our success to the topic and to our esteemed panel. So I really want to thank you guys for taking your time out to come and share your insights on the B2B sales and give our group, some insights on how they can take back anything they learned and bring it into their field. So thank you so much. And what I'd like to do is start out with asking you folks, please introduce yourselves. Tell us a little known fact that nobody might know. I know everything about you, doll, so you can't lie.
Warm up kind of comment.
And, tell us a little bit why you got into sales or the business that you were in, as you're telling us a little bit about your profile, and I'll let you go from there. All right, you first.
All right, Lawrence Delgado. Haven't been in sales for a long time, actually. For 10 years I was the CIO, so very different. Actually great, because I'll give you all a little different perspective on the buy side for 15 years here as CIO of Radian, right in Philly. But anyway, now in a startup. So I'm the youngest, I'm the most seasoned startup guy that Holly's ever met. Translation on the oldest dude.
There's an infraction.
And but anyway, 18 years prior to that in B2B sales at EDS and competing with IBM for a long time. So interesting. A couple interesting facts that you might not know. I'll give you 2. One, this is my cousin, and so that should really throw it. Our dad's actually sang opera at Victor's Cafe right here in Philadelphia. So very close guys. And then another fact that I'll bring my panel into it. I pitched to someone on the panel, and it didn't work out great. So it didn't work out too well.
And there you have it.
But they're my 2 facts. So I just wanted to make them familiar here.
Thank you, Lawrence. I'm Matt Johnson. I'm with a startup, we started up last June called Elemental Me, and working with a really smart team of organizational psychologists that we're developing an interactive assessment tool, so like basically a visually oriented survey tool that's able to identify what intrinsically motivates your workforce, employees. So I started in B2B sales. I've been basically in B2B sales my whole career. Started in the occupational health and wellness realm, was in that for 12 years, with a 4-year bridge with my own company that was so far removed from that. It was concert photographs and celebrity photographs that we wholesaled to. This is when there was actually
Paparazzi?
CD store. Well, we had photographers.
Just say what it is, come on.
This is actually when there was actual stores back in the late 90s, and they would actually be somewhere you'd walk in to buy a CD besides go online. So anyway, that was my first endeavor into the business world, the entrepreneurial world, I should say.
Awesome.
And then, so from there, the last 9 years I spent in the enterprise engagement space. So that was with one of the larger employee performance improvement companies. So we did everything from reward recognition, training, communications, anything to drive motivation, engagement. And so that's what kind of came out. My new business realized there's a white space with the fact that no one's really looking at what inherently motivates someone and how to drive, kind of what gets you up in the morning type of thing, opposed to just bribing you with gift cards and points and that kind of thing. Little known facts. So I'll give, since Lawrence went with 2, I'll go with 2. So the first fact is that my grandfather was, if you have any Villanova graduates here, or anybody?
I'm married to one.
Well,
There you go.
So my-
Villanova thing for grandfather.
So my grandfather was the head coach of Villanova football back in the early '60s when they actually won the Sun Bowl, went to the Liberty Bowl. They were Division I, and he actually played on the team in the '30s under one of the four horsemen from Notre Dame. That they actually went to the Bacardi Bowl. They played in Cuba, which this is before Castro. This is during the Batista realm. So anyway, so he actually played for Villanova and then coached at about 20 different places. My mom had to move in about 10 different states, and then he ended up in Villanova, and then was a pro football scout after that. Wow.
I
So.
don't know if I'd want to follow up after him.
Well, no, it's not, this is my grandfather. It's not me. It's not a guy, So, and then the other, the little known fact is that I played in 3 bands and played bass in 3 bands, but play bass, guitar, and drums.
Awesome.
Lousy drummer, but I can keep the beat. That's about
Awesome.
it. So,
Awesome.
anyway, thank you.
Thank you, that was great, thank you. Holly, can you top this?
Sorry.
All right, so. Okay, so what I do, how about that? And I would get stall. So I'm managing director of Gabriel Investments. We're an early stage venture capital firm here in Philadelphia. I know some of you, one of you in particular. Funny story.
Is this why I'm sitting in-
really
is that why I'm
So we
sitting
have a
between-
call. This is going to be the panel. We're on the phone, meeting each other and talking about what we're going to do and who we are. And Lauren says, I know you. I pitched you and you turned me down. I was trying to take.
It wasn't that.
So there's the, maybe that's the fact. So anyway, for the last 4 years, I've been in the venture capital game, looking for investments and then working with our portfolio companies on sales strategy and tactics. I also do a little bit of side work with a couple private equity firms, helping their companies with sales as well. And then 15 plus years before that, I was in sales at companies like Bank of America and Barclays, putting together big card deals that did get you out of bed for points and rewards. So, yeah, I spent most of my life trying to figure out how to make this
I used to be in
work.
that world, so I was totally disparaged.
And I'm going to deflect on the fact that somebody I can find it.
Good for you.
George Kratzel. See a lot of familiar faces here, which is great. So background, I was local, went to Garnet Valley.
Yeah.
And Villanova. There you go. Got a Villanova panel. Was an operator, so originally an IT consultant, and I owned an IT consulting company. And then in 1998, the guy I owned an IT consulting company came to me with this idea, which was a social media company. We really believed in it, bootstrapped it, took it through some really interesting times, successfully exited in 2007, a public company, which I ran digital for 3 years. Nowadays, what I do is, about 4 years ago, I started a venture firm here in Philly. We invest in early to growth stage, so we're really kind of A/B round is where we're at. We have about 40 million in assets under management, 12 companies right now with our first fund. So look forward to this topic. I think it's a great topic. Really interested in engaging and hearing what you guys want to talk about as well. Interesting fact, I don't know if I can hold up for these guys. So went to Alaska this summer. So for me, that was state number 50. So been everywhere.
What about Puerto Rico?
That's not 50. So that's my interesting fact. So look forward to conversation.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much, guys. So I'm going to start with Larry and ask some questions, but I want to invite everybody that if something that comes up resonates for you, please feel free to jump in and ask questions. This is for you. It's about you, and we want you to have the experience of learning from their minds. So I'm going to start with Larry, and I'm going to ask you. So tell me about what you think the state of the art of B2B sales is today. And is anything different? And are we still in the weeds with trying to understand the buyer's journey?
So you want to state of the union, not state of the art? I'll give you state of the art, but I'll give you state of the union. That's a good
You want to give me the state of the union?
So I would
Give
say,
it up, my friend.
let me give you I'll give you a good long answer. I would say, obviously, coming out of it for 10 years and then buying from it for 10 years. One, evolving, much better than when I left it. And much to chagrin to a lot of pundits that says the salesperson is getting disintermediated. I don't think that's happened. I think it's still a very complex thing. And I think what's changing is the process. And so the activities and the tasks that salespeople are doing are changing. So let me tee it up two ways. I'll give you things that I think that are changing that we still haven't gotten right in buying stuff from you guys for 10 years. And I'll give you stuff that has changed, but I think we're doing much better at. So things that have changed that, which is still screwing up, I think direct sales, and I think cold call is a dying breed. I think the notion of numbers game for direct is a dying game. The notion of calling someone like myself in an unqualified, unknown, non-advocate network is really, really tough for you guys. And I think it's been an effective deployment of capital for sales dollars. I think number two, the number of people making decisions in B2B sales has changed. It used to be on average from HBR 1.2, 1.3 people in 2000. So when you go in and sell data center services at EDS against IBM 10, 12 years ago, there's two son of a guns you got to convince. There's the CIO, there's the head of infrastructure, and maybe somebody else. Today, on average, they say it's 4 to 6 people. And so, one, since 2008, CIOs, CXOs have had a slow gradation lower in a buying approval. That kills you. Two, the advent of procurement, things like security, compliance. There are so many people who commit to the buying journey. And I think what B2B sales hasn't tackled is convincing and persuading and influencing power bases of all those compliance people, procurement people, the people who really know the business that you're selling to. I think you're still missing it. Three, and really linked to this whole technology thing, is we make the decisions. This is kind of know before you go. All my direct reports now, via social and via web and via capabilities and advocate networking, they know before they go. We down select before we even run. And we're dealing with Amazon and Salesforce and all the way down to small boutique BIs. And we know before we go, and we control the buying process. That's different. And I think the key that hasn't worked is sales and marketing integration is key to that, getting your word out, advocate selling, etc. And then the last thing, which is a pet peeve of mine, is value sell, value sell, value sell. I still have people in 2016, 17, big to small, Salesforce, I know somebody's in the room, still selling in my vertical to me about a gap in my capabilities and still can't articulate it in the currencies I have. So if we have cost to loan or cost to produce a loan, they still aren't articulating a cycle reduction in cost to loan. In pharma, they're not doing clinical trials, cycle reductions or cost per clinical. And it's really, value selling hasn't moved as much as I thought. That said, some good things. So one, I think it's no longer a sequential process. I think it moves more kind of through evaluate, explore, and experience in a kind of non-sequential way. And things we're doing well. I think, much to everybody's chagrin, CRM is better. Adoption rates are higher and higher in the last 10 years. I think it helps data. I think it helps performance. I think this whole nexus of social and mobile and different things like that has really helped in terms of the tools that you manage in richness and reach to more people. And the last thing I'll say that's very much better is on the engaged side, the power of the POC is in the last 4 years. We bought, and ask Andy, we bought $100 million worth of stuff in the last 6 years from the likes of Amazon and Bezos's boys and everybody else. Not one of those was done without a POC. Not one of those was done without a set of designated outcomes that we could test. Oh, I'm so sorry. Proof of concept. And particularly in tech sales, you can really test out what these people are saying in the pitch deck. And so a very powerful weapon, real good thing. But that's my state of the union.
Yeah, and I think that was very thorough. So I want to just jump in and ask a question, and somebody else can answer it, because I think you did a great job of articulating that. But so where does we talk about that being a sales rep for the B2B, but where does that responsibility lie on the sales managers and sales leaders with getting their sales teams prepared to do some of the things that he just talked about?
Yeah, I like this question. I can answer it, or try to. So,
I think what happens a lot when you look at like a sales process from the top, and top meaning whether it's regional VP or whoever is in charge of the sales team, that too much of the time, this is from my experience, maybe I just have to look at sales managers, but, not you.
Everybody thinks
Thanks,
you're sales
Todd.
manager, so.
I know. But it's a point of not understanding the individual salespeople and how they operate. Everybody lumps sales and marketing into the extrovert or right brain, and they lump the CIOs and tech and R&D into the left brain, and they think it's all about money, right? So I mean, I had a sales manager that would bring me into a room when it was fiscal year starting and look at the comp plan and whiteboard and talk about, you know, the Tesla I could buy and whatever, and I could give a, you know what, about, like I keep my cars for 10, 12 years. I keep really good care of them. I don't care about getting a new car next year. That's like, so, and it's sad that he had 6 people he was in charge of and couldn't, you know, drill down into, you know, a small micro team like that to understand the people. So it's not about the money. When you're in a B2B sales environment, that's a longer sales cycle, you know, 6 months and beyond. I always look at that as the Christmas Eve versus the Christmas Day. The Christmas Eve part is really looking at, and sorry for anybody who's, you know, a denomination, sorry for Stacy, or the pre-Hanukkah, whatever you want to call it. But it's really about the process. It's the steps of the sale. It's about making the right contacts, and like Larry said, it's, you know, now you have more, you know, heads to economic buyers to have to, you know, get in front of and convince and whatnot. But it's not about, you know, it's not about ringing the bell like you are, you know, like Gordon Gekko, getting him to buy, you know, invest $100,000 in a one-time thing. It's a long process. It's relationship building. So, what was your original question?
Who's accountant?
Who's accountant? So I really think it's a sales manager to understand the process and how they. I was kind of going back to his original question, which I like better. About when they get involved, how they get involved. You know, there's too many sales managers that still have too much ego around it. That would, you know, I called on the pharma space, life sciences space, and my sales manager, and it sounds like I'm really drilling him, but he didn't know anything about the pharma space. His background was more in finance, banking, in that space. So there was going to be no value add with him coming to meetings with me. And the other thing too, it's like there's a point where the perception of the contact, and I actually had this was like the real cathartic moment. I had a contact at one of my pharma companies. My sales manager insisted on coming to my meeting. I was new, 6 months into the job. Thank you. I'll spill that on you. 6 months into the job, but he insisted on coming to all the meetings. And one day she pulled me aside when he wasn't there and said, you know, like, you don't need him to come anymore. Like I felt like she said it in a very constructive, mentoring way, but it felt like I was some like junior salesperson. I was, you know, 38 years old or whatever at the time. Because he insisted on being part of everything. And sometimes you have to know as a sales manager when to delegate, when to let them go, when someone works great from working from home and not have to see them every day. Mm-hmm. And there's some people that need more support, more, you know, consultative, you know, like strategy meetings that, you know, that you work with 2 or 3 times a week. So it's just really understanding your sales team and understanding, you know, how to take it from there.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Okay, Hal, you like the first question better, so why don't you take
another question?
It's a question.
No, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, why do you ask a question?
I gotta kind of follow up on that. So thinking about a sales manager who knows that his team is working with a finite resource. So let's say an institution that has only so many tour slots in a given day. They're trying to figure out whether to go for stable sales, ones which are reoccurring every year, but there are less dollars per sale, or push for bigger sales, but they're more likely to lose them. They're not going to reoccur. And so, do you have any sort of insight to give for how to break that up? Like, okay, maybe 30%, get that stability so you know you can cover overhead, or just, you know, risk it all, screw those clients if they're not giving you a lot of money, and just go for the big ones.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you my opinion. So when I look at small companies that are trying to figure this out, and this is one of the big things that most small companies are trying to figure out, right? Do I go for the big ones? Do I go for the whales? Or do I try to is it a volume game? So fundamentally, it's 2 different sales. It requires 2 different processes, different kinds of salespeople, different operations, different back end, different support. So companies, and I've been at those companies, and I've even personally been the one trying to do both of those, because you think I can get the small ones faster. They take as long, if not longer. They often take even more maintenance, because the decision for a small business is a big decision. And so I've seen this fail a lot. Well, I was going to say one more thing. So the other thing is that when we think about the funding of companies that are doing different kinds of sales approach, what you pay your salesperson influences your cost to acquire that customer, right? So if I'm paying you $50,000 and you're working on small deals and you're getting, it takes you a long time to get a deal that's worth $1,000, right? The math, I mean, I just made it feel very simple, but you would be surprised, right? So you have people that come in and they're working at a company and they're trying really hard and they're getting lots of $1,000 sales, but they're never going to get 50 of those in a year, okay? Okay? So I think fundamentally it's a committing to a process, and some of them may take a lot longer, but then that's a big strategic decision, right? Because what is the market and the opportunity and the ability for you to close the sales? Because if you can never land a whale, then we should never go down that path to begin with.
Well, so I kind of want to, I guess, clarify the question a little bit. Let's say that there are existing smaller clients, and for the sales rep himself, it makes sense to go for the bigger client because they get a bigger commission. But for the manager, it makes sense to keep that client coming back again and again and again. But if the sales rep is the one who gets to make those decisions, he might choose to leave the smaller client and fish after bigger ones. How do you stop that?
That's a systemic issue.
It's a structural thing, though. I mean, at some point in time, clients start dividing, or companies start dividing up into customer success and account management versus your pure hunters. So, you know, it becomes a structural thing where you're not going to want to incent a hunter to do the account management or customer success role. It's just fundamentally, it's going to be wrong. You're not going to have the right comp structure. It's ultimately not going to be good for the company. So I think I would roll back and just look at how structurally it is.
And if I were you and I had the choice, or if I had the choice, and I could get more off the big deals and I could close the big deals, I'd do that all day long.
But if it's a case where it's an emerging growth company and it's all about cash flow, then that's a different thing.
Yeah, it's stability is so important.
Right. So,
It's always dangerous. Like one thing, guys, you're going to see me squirm all around here. This couch is
really
humongous. It's just like we're swimming around.
We tried to emulate Ellen's show.
I don't have a frame of reference on that.
never sat
Are we going to be dancing?
Feel comfort.
So, but I think that's a really hard question for a panel to answer, just because there's so many it depends on that. Right? Because a big problem I see when companies come in and they pitch us on something is, you know, you really want to invest in growth. You want to invest in helping them grow. But a really important part of that is really understanding the fulfillment of the product, the usage of the product. Is it successful? So in the situation that you were just bringing up, my mind started going to, well, these smaller clients, are they showing that the product has viability, and now we just have to figure out how we scale, you know, that versus there's diminishing value in the product, and that's why they're not worth as much anymore. I don't know. There's just, it's really hard on a panel to give you any kind of really good advice that way.
Great. So let me ask you, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Just, I mean, our kind of backtrack a little bit at the very beginning, what you've been spoken before about coffee. So I'm fairly new to sales, so I think one of the
Phil Donahue.
So one of the things that I was interested in knowing, I am fairly new to sales, and there is cold calling involved in our processes, and I'm finding that I'm better, obviously, in person than I am on the phone. I'm awful on the phone. So since this is a dying, let's say, breed of things that you can do procedural-wise, specifically between every one of you, what captures your attention? Like, what statement or what thing could someone do to really capture your attention that shows value and moves you to the next level to have a meeting with that person?
Teach me something.
Teach you something?
Yeah, that's the whole thing with sales nowadays. Like, you know, Lawrence was talking about it a bit, but it's still a relationship business. Like, I don't see technology all of a sudden replacing salespeople, right? It's just the good salespeople are the ones that understand how to leverage technology to make their job more efficient. You know, how do I prioritize better? How do I be there with a need? But if you want my attention, it's simply, you know, come to the table and you're going to teach me something about my business.
Right.
Then it's worth my value.
Or peer group. The only other thing I would add, I think that's dead on. People, we want to learn, you know, and you know, that's the first and best answer. The second one I would tell you that's big in terms of getting people's ear is in their peer group. If you have an advocate who's used you and there's a story there. Stories stick, and stories really stick when it's somebody they trust. That's big, so I would only add that.
So would that be kind of teetering off of referral rather than?
There's referral, there's a number of really good stuff going on with these advocate groups. If you ever heard of Influitive or customer advocacy, you can build advocate groups of your users, and when you tie that to one of the people who's in their CIO team, or part of their peer group in terms of using your product and using it well, that's a big one.
I was going to make a funny comment. So, when I first started out in sales and you were trying to find a decision maker, we used to get in a war room and we would map out, and you'd be cold calling, trying to figure out, you weren't doing the sale yet, you were just trying to figure out who the decision maker was. So you'd be building, you'd recreate an org structure. So there might be more decisions, I know you've done it too. There might be more decision makers now, but it's so much, I think it's easier to figure out who they are because LinkedIn exists, because companies are so much more open about who's who and who you need to get to. But I'll tell you, from a venture perspective, companies that I talk to quickest are the ones that are referred to me by somebody I know.
Right.
And I am, you're all certainly connected to me through some way, right? So a second or third connection. And when you're coming into somebody and you're trying to get to them cold, I mean, there's no reason that you have to go cold to anything anymore.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. Not only teaching them something, but you get a priority in the email inbox when George sends me an email versus, certainly I'm not even opening it if it's cold. The other thing I would say is probably totally common sense. But when I get LinkedIn invites, and it's not even, hey, would you look at my company? It's just an invite. I get 5 of these a day where it's just someone's just going through and I almost put them on the I'm never going to talk to you list.
Right.
Even something catchy like, you look like you invest in what we're working on, would love a 15-minute call. Actually, sometimes, all right, I might consider that. So probably common sense, but.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing the takeaway is really you have to be creative about going away from the cold call and really using your peers and using LinkedIn and social media to get introductions. And that's, I think, what you said initially in one of your answers. You have to influence the sale. It's going to happen through, the research is showing that it's happened through referrals.
Yeah, this is I wanted to share a very quick story with you because thanks to my daughter, I got onto Twitter and then broke away a bit from LinkedIn. But I had an interesting story the other night. I was waiting for Alec Baldwin and the other lady to do the spoof in the debate on a Saturday night. So I am tweeting, and my wife said, "What are you doing?" And I find a CEO of a company who announces himself on Twitter. So I compliment him, and I said, "That's really great." I said, "Hey, we're a company outside Philadelphia. You want to start a conversation?" So he tweeted back at midnight during the debate, so I paid attention. The next day at 10 o'clock, we had a call with a couple of people in our company with the CEO, and I think we may be signing a deal in a couple of days. So for me, this is a fantastic story. So there's a lot of tools. The tools have changed. And I agree with you with cold calling. It's a hit or miss, but the tools have changed, and use these tools effectively, constructively, and I think you can get some results. So,
Yeah, thank you for that. So net is come to more meetups and meet people that can help you, or not any kind of networking venue. It's really, it's not what you know, it's who you know. End of story. And that's been forever. Nothing has changed in sales. I'm going to move on to another topic. Can we agree to move on? Awesome. I appreciate that. All right. So I'll throw it out there for one of you to. You folks review a ton of people that want you to invest in their companies. So what is some of the things that you're looking at when you review the sales teams and the sales capabilities and the management team?
Okay. There's a lot to it, so I'll just kind of go real high level and just bullet. First thing, the reason why you're talking to them is you believe in the market. So it's, I guess your question is to the guys of sales, right? What am I looking at when I'm evaluating the sales team?
The sales team.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So with the sales team, things start, and it really depends on where the company is. Are they seed, are they A, or are they B? You know, that's going to matter a lot with it. But fundamentally, you want to make sure that a fit's been established. So
fit meaning?
a product market fit. So the promise that they're making is not only something that will sell, but it's something where they know who the buyer is, they understand the nerve, and it's really geared towards a problem that's sitting on their desk. If you don't have that, you really can't really go too much further because it's going to be hard with that company. But you do want to make sure there is a sales competency internally and strategy that has that. So that would be the first thing. Second would be team. I look at the team a lot. Typically, it's hard for people to do something that they've never done before. Doesn't mean that people won't do something, for the first time. But when you're evaluating an investment, you want to have confidence that you're putting capital towards something where they're doing something that they at least have knowledge of or experience. It doesn't have to be within that company. It could be prior experience. I like investing in companies that have founding teams or good executives that have been customer facing in the past.
So give me an example of some questions that you might elicit to find out if they have the...
Well, that's easier to get because you can do that based off of their prior experience, success they've had, things they are. So you don't really have to grill them on that, and quickly you can, through conversation with them, tell if they have a competency around that.
Okay.
But it's really important that, because they then understand the market they're trying to disrupt. It's hard to disrupt the market if you don't understand it, and if you're never customer facing, if you're always in the back, it's really hard to understand. So that's an important thing. Then you look at traction, you look at the usage of the product. Again, what's really important for me is not only I can sell something, but the promise I make when I sell, it's actually a reality. So if you want to look at that and dig into that a little bit. Fourth is, are they metric driven? And that's important for two reasons. One, do they utilize dashboards in order to manage their business? Are they able to speak competently to their numbers? But also, with that, you get an understanding of how believable their forward numbers are. And it's not that hockey sticks don't exist, but that's all you see. So you have to have confidence, that someone's going to be able to do something, and the easiest way to do that is, do they track what they have right now? Is it repeatable? There's all kinds of sales metrics. I mean, everyone in the room probably understands what those are that you're going to look at. The ones that I look at most is, is there acceleration in their bookings? Is there acceleration in their pipeline? Is there expansion potential? When they land something, what's their churn rate? Simple things like that. So those are the things I concentrate on when I look at sales.
One thing I would say is, I agree with everything that George said. But one of the things that's interesting when we see companies, and I think that you'll appreciate this, is that a lot of times a founder will come in, brilliant, an inventor, an academic, and they'll say, we've got this great product, we just need funding, and then we'll get a sales team. And it's one of the scariest things because, as you all know, the best products don't always win. And so we're always looking for, okay, so get out there and sell it. Because I'm sure many of you have been in the position of, you've been a sales team, you've been that first sales team, and I had a terrible sales team. It's always bling sales guys, right? Hired a bad sales, I gotta have another bad salesperson, but the product's great. Someone's gonna buy it, they just couldn't sell it. I've been on both sides of that. And sometimes it's just not sellable. Products or pricing or whatever, or it just may not be the market. To George's point, there just might not be product market fit. So the way we look for product market fit when we evaluate a company is actually seeing that someone has bought it. And we want to see that more than one person has bought it. And we want to talk to the people who have bought it and get their experience. And so that's often what we do in the beginning of our process, is get a good sense for, all right, well, what were your choices in the buying process? And why did you make this decision? And how was your decision process? And what's your experience been since then? So that's one of the things that we look at. We look at sales cycle. How long is the cycle? What's the value of that sale? In terms of metrics, too, that we really focus on. Because of our past businesses, we sold a lot of commodity products. It was how you differentiate marketing and then try to sell a lot of them. So we really look at the cost per acquisition. What does it cost you to make that sale? What's the value of that relationship over time? Really that simple. And we look at pipeline. We all understand pipelines are typically maybe a little bit bigger than what reality is. So we might look at it, so you should know this, right? So we might look at pipeline, talk about sales, understand the company, and then we might say, well, you know what, let's see how things go. Let's track in and see how things go in 30 days, right? So you should know in 30 days, I'm gonna look at that pipeline again, and I'm trying to understand what happened in that 30 days to try to validate, well, I'm not trying to look for discrepancies, I'm trying to understand if it was true, because then that would be symbolic of what the company will do over time.
So that brings me to my next question. Perfect segue, which is, what is the gulf between the pitch deck and, you know, what actually happens in the sales process? From the vision of the investor to what they pitch to you and what's actually going on in the field.
I would say generally investors have their own way of slicing and dicing potential numbers of what companies are projecting. So an easy way, back of the envelope, very simple thing that we might do is we might say it's going to take twice as long and you're going to get half what you think you're going to get. Okay? So back of the envelope, that still doesn't. So I'm looking to say you're probably not going to do exactly what you think you're going to do. Is it still an attractive company? So I'm sure there are fancier ways, and we have some other ways that we analyze companies. But at first blush, that's what I'm looking at. And to be honest, it's usually pretty true.
Yeah, and the discounting factors, you definitely do that. Just something we do though is we like to get deep with. We want to talk to your customers. We want to talk to people that are using it. We want to talk to your users. We want to be helpful too. One of the things I pride what we do at Mission, we like to take prospective companies that we're looking at and introduce them into our network and see them sell firsthand. I think it's a great way to judge if something works or not. And it's valuable, right? Because if we pass on the investment, if it's not something that they do, hopefully they got a couple of customers. And I think it's a really valuable way to do it. I mean, I think that I've been on both sides. And as an investor, I always want to be the investor that I would have wanted to invest in me. And I think it's a great way. And I think when you go to pitch investors, you should challenge them to do that. You know, it's a great way to learn firsthand. Boy, you can get some business out of it too, because they're going to bring you to people that are going to be really honest and give you friendly feedback. I think it's the best way to learn about, though, is to really dig in and get to know it. It's so much better than just looking at numbers. Numbers are important, but I think really understanding the customer nerve and if that fulfillment is there is a great way to look at it.
One other thing, I was just saying, one other thing I would say is that whenever an investor or a founder comes in to pitch us, we see that pitch as if they're making a sale to a customer. So the way that they come in and they shake our hands and they're prepared and they're early or not, how they treat us, how they follow up, we see that exactly as if they're what that would look like if they're selling a customer. And sometimes that gives us great confidence, and sometimes it gives us not as much great pause. But you know, the whole world is a sale. Everything you do is selling.
So how about for your perspective?
Well, mine's a little different because I'm on this is startup side. So I'll take a different gulf or chasm between what you pitch and versus. So less on the growth side, like this is how we're going to grow. More on the fit thing you were talking about, what we say we're building and selling. One, which we talked about, was how we train and inculcate people to sell the thing. There seems to be a gap as you bring people on. But even bigger than that is, particularly when you're really young, you just got a new product. These alpha customers or these co-creation customers often take you down. You know, first of all, they're so important to you, right? I need the cash. I really do. I need this deal, right? So we get the deal. And they'll take you down a deep, dark, dank hole that isn't quite what I told the investor, or isn't even quite what I told.
And doesn't look like any other customer.
Correct. And so there's this fine balance between the capital and getting cash flow going and building the foundation. And this guy dragging me down, well, we love your product for automation, but can you take it down this? And all of a sudden, I'm in a different game. I'm almost in the IT consulting business. And let me tell you, that's one place I don't want to be. But that's another chasm that results in terms of early stage alpha customer or co-creation customer goes down a different leg than you were originally anticipating, which is always an example. Sorry.
No, it's great. And I was talking to Bruce over here in the beginning before we broke to start this. So Bruce I've known for about a year, and this is just a cautionary tale of the entrepreneur's optimism. So taking it from, again, the side that Larry was talking about. So I remember sitting down with Bruce. Bruce has been through the startup realm and exit realm and everything. He's done quite well, and within the kind of a tech nuance to it as well. So our business is SaaS-based. So we're in the kind of the motivation engagement space, but it's, you know, what our solution is really like the analytics, the blueprint, you know, the data that we're providing. So when I sat down with Bruce, this is like a couple months into this thing, just the ideation stage, and I said, you know, he said, well, how long do you think it'll take, you know, before you're ready for commercial launch? I'm like, yeah, you know, probably like 6 months, and you know, and he's like, well, I think it's going to take 18 months. And I'm like, and after he left, I'm like, it's crazy. He doesn't know. Hey, now I'm like, we're at 15 months now, and it'll be about 18 months. So Bruce was like exactly like dead on. So no, you were. It was just I'm not. You know, I wasn't in the tech world at that point, and I hadn't even engaged in our now tech partners that were building out the UX and the platform and everything at the time. It's just based on like, well, this should take a month, and you know, to go to the beta should take month and a half, and it doesn't work that way, you know. So just keep it realistic. I mean, obviously you want to be optimistic, you want to keep your head down and everything, but just have a little more realistic timetable, because that could really affect, especially if you're getting in front. I mean, I'm bootstrapping just like George did, because I like to model with his career. If it was good enough for George to bootstrap, it's good enough for me. But for companies going in front of anybody from an angel or VC perspective, like if you were me talking to them again, way early stage, you know, it was pre-sales. But like if you're thinking you're going to, you know, be viable in 6 months and it's really 2 years, that's not going to bode well. You're going to lose any of the steam you have from anybody in conversations. So just be optimistic, but realistic and pragmatic.
Awesome. Any questions from the group?
Just a quick one. What do you think when someone's pitching you and they say, I plan to outsource my marketing? Someone else will do it for me.
Like sales or just the marketing?
Sales.
You do realize you're like, oh, it's
All
such open-ended questions. You go anywhere with this.
Yes.
Correct. No, I think.
Way to go, Dr. Jones.
It depends on how early you are, right? Are you talking about just a function? Are you talking about a creative function? Are you talking about content creation? I mean, those are things that can. Absolutely. If you're talking about the brand, if you're talking about, you know, how I'm going to weave this vision into the company, which is very much, you know, it's an overall function, but then it starts coming into marketing a bit. You can outsource that. So to me, like there's parts of this that it's what makes it fun. It's what makes it hard. It's part of the chase. And as an investor, I want to know that you have the mettle to be able to do those things too, because you're going to have a lot of hard things you're going to have to do. So if it's just a function,
all day
absolutely.
long the functions. There's companies emerging today in little niches, like when I mentioned it, advocate marketing. Yeah,
and it's cost efficient to outsource. Yeah, I mean it really is. It's smart to do that rather than to hire somebody to be a specialist in something at your stage.
You mentioned earlier differentiation, the comp structure for different types of salespeople, like hunter versus account manager. So for the hunter section, I've played around with a lot of different models where with commission, being fixed, variable commission, different people on salary. How do you balance that with, especially in that hunter mentality, where it should be all 100% commission, but a lot of times that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And variable commission with people competing with each other or set rates, it's a total mess, at least in my experience.
It's a tricky thing with sales comp because in the end you get what you pay for. You really do. But you also want to make sure there's really good alignment between you and that salesperson that you're bringing in. The reason why I say that is if you have somebody that, let's say you're an early stage company and you have somebody that really wants a majority base, that should be a really bad signal, right? Because it's just not gonna be that way. You want to motivate them, but you also need to have somebody that isn't someone who's great at a 500-person company but terrible at a 50-person company, right? And so comp, you know, in comp structuring can signal off of it. For a company that's kind of like late seed, early A, I like, you know, where they can at least make, you know, double their base through, you know, a variable comp, and then they're going to have some kind of equity option involved. That's like a really easy way to think about it.
Those are your standard template, double comp, variable.
Yeah. So there's going to be a part fixed, part base, part variable, and then some kind of equity compensation with it. But that company that I talked about that I built and scaled, I mean, I hired and fired a lot of salespeople, that's part of what it is. Comp's hard. Comp's hard to get right, and then you have to continue to work at it too, because your company changes, the need changes. So there's not going to be like a really easy answer that you can go off of.
Do different things for different people, or is it across the board?
No, it's going to be different people, different things for different people based on what they're doing. But structurally, you want to make sure the carrot's good for everybody to chase it. I think the thing with comp is like, the thing I got right when I was an operator is I got to a place where I had the right people in the right seats on the bus. So I had the right hunters, I had the right people doing account management, I had the right people doing customer support. That's the thing you have to get right, and then you figure out comp roles from it based on market. There's a lot of data out there that can help you though too. That is directionally right.
Yeah, I was just going to add real quick.
Oh, sorry.
And making sure everybody, to your point, when you win or when the salesperson wins, everyone wins. And so one of the things I've seen both from a salesperson perspective and from this side as well, I think is an issue is when people cap comp. So my perspective is, why would you ever disincent someone to just keep going at it? And again, if you're aligned in the right way, then you want your salespeople to be some of the highest paid people in the organization. And you should be okay with that.
Yeah, my top salespeople always made more money than me. Always, when I had my own company. And it should be that way.
Was it your commission or salary?
Commission. No, but yeah, you want that kind of structure that Holly just said.
I'm going to go to John and then to you. Go ahead, John.
So more of a qualitative question, good quantitative question. The best pitch you saw, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Why was it? It's an investment pitch.
So this is from a company perspective, not necessarily from a sales perspective. All right, so when I think generally about the best pitches, they are to the point, they are short, I feel the problem. So where I invest, which is very early, it's an emotional investment. It's not all emotional, but you have to feel and understand the problem because you understand the bigger market. And the entrepreneurs are prepared. They're prepared. They have a vision. They understand how they're going to get there. They may be totally wrong in execution when they're out there doing it, and hopefully they've got some experience and they've done something like that before. But it's crisp and it's short.
The best ones I had are never pitches. So like, if you go 4 slides in with us, you're lucky. Because there's just questions that come up, and I don't want a pitch. You can just mail me your pitch, and I'll get your pitch, right? I want to have a discussion with you. I want to have a dialogue with you. So the best ones I had were people that let me understand something different than I thought before and got me really excited about their point of view, and came really with crisp kind of use cases that they were fulfilling, and let me understood why they were important. But they were discussions, they weren't pitches.
That's a great answer. It's vision selling. People have a problem just sitting down and having that discussion. They get all nervous in front of the VC. They have to do something with the slides and make it all compelling. And they forget why they did it and what they're passionate about, and it doesn't come through. So it's cool stuff. All right, we have, oh my God, millions of hands. You first.
Yes, I have a question on topic of compensation. Obviously, we want to make sure that the salespeople are incentivized and, like you said, don't cap. Thank you. My question is on account management and customer success. What are your thoughts about having an incentivized compensation commission based on how long they keep a customer happy, kind of tied it into churn or the negative of churn, hopefully. So I guess the question is, what do you suggest in terms of comping account managers and customer success folks?
Thank you.
Okay, so one of the things, I've been in sales marketing, but mostly business development for 25 plus years. I've never had a delineation of the hunter-farmer thing. Whatever I sold, I also managed through the process. And it was never a case where I wasn't compensated residually after the fact. So there was always something that, that made up, kind of that, incentive package that it was worth me continuing to, dialogue and grow and expand the relationship and make sure that they were happy and satisfied. I don't know from perspective, I mean, and I think in the startup realm, I don't think most of the time from a resource and expense standpoint that you can afford really to have two functions like that. Usually it's going to be the same person. So from a standpoint of looking at how the compensation works, I mean, the last company I was with, and we were talking about pretty large capital sales, but it was the easiest XY axis compensation package you could ever imagine. It was revenue and profit. So you went right down the grid, you looked at 3 million, 4 million, looked at it was a 45% profit margin, and there was your bonus. So, that's one way to work it. I mean, but it didn't matter whether I could have sold the first day I got there, could have had someone who, that I had a brother-in-law at Comcast that bought $5 million off me, and I could have retained that account for the next 20 years, I'd be compensated the exact same way. And that's not necessarily, I'm saying, the commonplace thing. Usually it's new sales, you get 5% commission or 10% commission the first year, and then it's a residual of 2% for the next 3, and maybe then it just gets folded into your base salary from there. But,
where he is, but everywhere I've gone on account management, there's always the opportunity in terms of what we call growth on existing. And so when you have growth on existing, there's always kickers they design. So, but you always get that, account management, a little more salary, always growth on existing kickers. Always, we've always had that. It just doesn't have the power of the field sales hunters that we.
All right, I'm going to have one more question back here, and then we're going to go to our final question. Okay?
I'm going to step away from the column so you guys can see. So quick question for you guys for when you see a company that's got a lot of potential, scalability, it's not going as fast as you want it to be, and as fast as you want it to go, and it's a software engineer or somebody that's non-sales professional. What typically happens if you know there's a huge potential in the market? Do you invest in a salesperson, or do you teach them skills to sell it themselves?
Are you assuming we're in the company already then?
Like we've already.
Yeah, you've already invested, or you see the potential. There's a market. In other words, you've already got around it. And do you guys look at it where it's not scaling as quickly as you want it to, or it's not going to? So what do you guys do? Do you guys invest so that that money's going directly to the salesperson, or do you consult, or do you invest in training for them?
Okay, so as an investor, I don't want to make that decision. Right, so that's the executive's decision, or the team's decision. I want to help them because I want to help them think through it. But we'll troubleshoot it with them. We'll try and think through what's the potential solution. But they have to drive it. I mean, as an investor, that's the one thing you always have to be careful of. It's not your company. You've invested in the company. You want to be a really good advisor. You want to help them think through solutions, because for me, I've made a ton of them, so it's I've got a good base of knowledge around that on things to avoid. But that's never something that we're driving. It's something that you want to get them comfortable with and own. I think you need, to your specific question about sales, you need the right sales leadership in there, because it's hard to just kind of attach individual contributors if there isn't somebody there for them to kind of learn from, grow from, build from, make the strategic decisions with sales that kind of meet, that works within their talent. But just to the overall question, I would work with the executive team to try and come up with a solution, but I would never impose how I want to do it.
No, that's exactly what I was
Okay. Well, I'm going to leave off with one more question, and we're going to wrap it up. Okay? So what parting words do you guys have for your sales teams? What advice to sales leaders would you have to their sales teams as they're starting out?
I think one of the things, and we started with it, which I think was good, is your customer's changing, right? Your buyer's changing. And I think that's the fun and exciting thing about sales right now, is I think sales, there's questions, is sales harder today or is it easier? And I think it's different, right? But, we have invested as a fund in 2 companies that do kind of sales enablement, help sales teams achieve goals. Because I see that as a really big need. I see the last 10 years as a complete explosion of the marketing stack, right? right? So now, there's just solutions everywhere for every bit of marketing. I think that same thing is starting to happen with sales. And I don't think that should be a scary thing for salespeople. That should be embraced, because it's how do I create greater efficiency? Whether it's analytics to help me prioritize, or it's things around social selling to help me engage my customer. Your customer is now digital. So how am I building a relationship with them digitally, knowing that most buyers want to do a great majority of the research on their own. Like CEB says 70%, I think, is done before they even talk with you. So I think it's a pretty exciting time, because I think there's a lot of innovation happening. It also means there's a lot of noise out there. But successful salespeople are the ones that are going to embrace that innovation and really use it as an advantage, or a strategic advantage. And I think we should continue to see kind of the choices explode as investment continues to go into sales technology. But I think it's a great thing for salespeople. It just creates efficiency, and this whole thing is, what is my buyer doing? How do I match my buyer's needs? How do I build relationship and engagement with them?
I would say more from a simple, instead of a sales leader's side, from a salesperson side, I would say, as you think about opportunities in sales, especially in the startup world, I would handle it like a sales process. And so I would do things like kick the tire in different ways than, like, when I look at some of the sales jobs I took over the years, and when I went into those positions, what I didn't know, or the research I maybe hadn't done, I always just thought, well, I'm probably just going to be, I'm hoping I'm just going to be better than the last guy, and that's why I'm in this position. And then you get in, you're like, maybe I should actually talk to that guy. So I would do that. I would talk to the salespeople that were there before. I would have an understanding of how that organization is sold in the past. I would actually try to make a sale. I would call friends or family or people in the industry and try to get a sense for if the proposition is sellable. I would ask for equity in the company, because I think there's been a long time of don't give salespeople equity. That's a terrible thought. You want your salespeople the most incented and aligned with the company's outcome in the end. So I would be just going about it in a different way. Salespeople
You're
are
winning over the room right
yeah. Except for I didn't have that unique factor. But I would just go about it like you would as if you were prospecting for your actual sale. I would just think about going into sales jobs, not because it looks like an interesting company, but going in knowing how you can be successful, because not every salesperson is right for every sales environment. And so, going in, eyes open, with a real reality of what the situation is, you'll be happier, you'll save everyone time, especially yourself. It's awesome. It's my example.
Very good. The one thing I would say from the experience of B2B sales is that don't get comfortable with some of the social media or technology that's out there that makes you feel like you're taking steps to the sale that you're really not. It's because you connect with someone that you maybe talk to for 3 seconds at an event, and you connected with them doesn't mean you're getting traction with that account. I think the biggest thing is being in front of the prospect or customer as much as you can. Find an excuse to be in front. Again, there's so much creativity out there within LinkedIn and other social media that you can utilize to find that Larry's speaking here tonight, or that George is going to be at a startup grind event as a speaker. To get in front of people, and not only when you're prospects, the one thing I learned as well is that if geography makes sense, meaning our model in the company I was with before was, we had regional approaches. We had 26 sales levels, so we were very centralized within an area. No matter what it was, I would be in front of the client every time I could. Whether a conference call, it would be just as easy to take, but if I could drive 45 minutes to be in front, because there's so many times that I'd be at the company, getting on the elevator to go down, and someone would say, I need to talk to you, about X, Y, Z. That would never happen on a conference call, and they probably would have been, it was not like they would have called me later. It's one of those things that it's top of mind because they saw me and want to talk. And there's so much business, I can't even put a quantitative measure on how much business that I was able to, multiply from the current clients because I was in front of the customer and visible and knew their business and understood what they were trying to accomplish.
Thank you.
I got two mics here just to make sure I emphasize my last point. I'm gonna end it.
Maybe 1, 2, 3.
I'll just end it where I kind of started it, just because we're talking to so many people, particularly on the West Coast, around sales and marketing integration. I think it's one of the biggest ways you could pay dividends with your time. I think, one, it is the key to getting feedback back through your organization from the customer. Two, it is the way to inform the value sell process. Everything from loss reviews and everything else getting back into your value sell is critical. And third, sales and marketing integration is huge. The point we've talked about infinitum tonight, the exploiting of technologies around everything from advocate groups to social. That combination will pay big dividends in your time in terms of the richness and reach of your efforts. I think it's a really big payoff.
Wow. I'm in awe of this group. How about a round of applause for our panel?